Hello. Hello, everybody. How you doing? Welcome to Dangerous Ideas and welcome to the revolution. More importantly, welcome to the revolution. How is everyone out there? Hope you're doing well. Today, we're going to get into new evidence or more information supporting the idea that Israel cannot defend itself against Iran and seems worried about that fact. And actually, it may have been Israel that has stopped Trump so far from bombing Iran again. We'll get into that. Other information about Israel and their ongoing genocide in Gaza. Some really cool stuff I have lined up for you. Also, because it is Martin Luther King Day, we will rehash a little bit of the reality, the truth that James Earl Ray did not kill Martin Luther King. This is now well known if you are someone who reads books and learns things. If you choose to, clap your hands on your ears and go blah, 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 which is a way to live life. That is, if that's your choice, that's fine. But if you're more the reading, learning type, then you know that James Earl Ray did not kill Martin Luther King Jr. We're going to get into that and so much more. So click thumbs up, click share, leave a comment, do all the algorithm things. Whatever the algorithm likes. I don't know, maybe posing nude in front of your webcam. I don't know if the algorithm's into that. Whatever it's into, you just do some of that, and that'll help a lot. All right, but let's get into. There's a great article by Joe Loria over at Consortium News. I have written some articles for Consortium News. Great outlet. And it's really interesting. It puts together a lot of data, a lot of information that has come out about Iran and about Israel and about what Israel may be aiming for right now. We know that Israel, yes, wants to coup Iran. That's obvious, right? And we know that Israel has wanted to bomb Iran for years. And we know that Israel had a 12-day war with Iran this past year, right? 2025, last summer. So we know those things. But what is it that Israel wants right now? Yes, they want to coup Iran, but they have been doing it by having Mossad on the ground in Iran, which Mossad has admitted to that. They tweeted excitedly that they were on the ground with the protesters in Iran. But anyway, in this article from Joe Loria, the title, Israel Fears It Can't Defend Itself Against Iran, he says Israel is fearful that its air defense systems depleted by Iranians in June's 12-day war have not been sufficiently restored to withstand Tehran's powerful response if Trump's public ravings leads him to bomb Iran. And it does, if you like what we know about Donald Trump. We know he's unhinged. We know he'll bomb at the drop of a hat. We know he'll break all international laws. We'll know he'll risk nuclear war again and again and again because he wants to do something. We know he'll kidnap world leaders at the drop of a hat. So why is it that during these U.S.-backed, U.S. And Israel-funded protests, that doesn't mean there's no genuine protesters in Iran. There are, but also the ones with guns killing people are, I'd say, likely to be those connected to Mossad or to U.S. NGOs, etc. But anyway, why is it during these protests, which started December 28th, Trump has not bombed Iran? Now, you and I may go because that would be unhinged and lunatic, and it could cause a world war. It could cause war with Russia, like straight up war between U.S. and Russia, etc. Yes, you and I know that, but what is unhinged Donald Trump thinking? Why has he not bombed Iran? Israeli outlet Ynet Global reported, according to CNN, don't worry, this is not just according to CNN, there's more coming up. So if you hear that and roll your eyes, I'm right there with you. But according to CNN, Israeli officials warned that air defense systems had been used extensively during last year's direct conflict with Iran, and that they did not believe the Iranian regime would collapse quickly without a prolonged military campaign. Behind the scenes, an urgent effort has been underway by some top U.S. allies to forestall military action. Basically, they're trying to get Trump not to bomb Iran at the moment. Israelis didn't believe the regime would fall quickly without a prolonged campaign, and there was concern over the state of the country, meaning Israel's country's missile defenses, which were extensively used during the conflict between Israel and Iran last year. A different source, so that's not coming from CNN, a different source familiar with the matter said, and we're going to get more into just how extensively depleted Israel's Iron Dome is and how it's been proven not to be an Iron Dome. Some people called it a tofu dome. You toilet paper dome. You go with what feels right to you. And we'll get into more of this as well, but I can't help but jump ahead. If you remember the 12-Day War, where sure, the U.S. Western media had to run around with the propaganda take that, Israel obliterated Iran, Trump and Israel are awesome, oh my God, they should wear capes because they are superheroes. Yes, that's Western media, but if you actually looked at like some Israeli media, if you actually looked at non-Western media, you would have learned that Iran, for basically, they use drones that cost like $1 million a piece, like or less. And sorry, not $1 million. It costs like thousands of dollars a piece. And yet every missile that was hitting them was costing like $1 million or more. So Iran was heavily depleting Israel's defenses. They fired 300 of these cheap drones, or most of the 300 of these cheap drones, at the Iron Dome, and very expensive, very hard to produce missiles were used to take down these cheap little drones. However, there were a lot of missiles that got through, the ones that were not drones, the ones that were not, flying slow, the hypersonic missiles, those all got through. More on that in a moment. The New York Times published a curious report on Thursday under the headline, and this next part is why I think that this is not a ruse. I don't think that Israel is faking that they're not ready for Iran to strike them so that they can then attack Iran out of the blue and, throw them off. Now, who knows? Maybe Trump bombs tomorrow and I go, wow, did I have that wrong? Could happen. We don't know with Trump. Trump is a giant question mark because he's not going off of reason. He's not going off of logic. He's not going off of like war games that have been carefully played out on computer systems. He is going off of his gut, which, let's remember, is filled with McDonald's cheeseburgers, which are made from, horse lips and chicken assholes. So that's what his gut is. That's what's telling him how to behave. And that's how you end up in this situation. Anyway, Israel and Arab nations asked Trump to refrain from attacking Iran. This was a New York Times article. Prime Minister Netanyahu of Israel asked the president to postpone any planned attack. Israeli and Arab officials fear Iran could retaliate by striking their countries. Now, the New York Times really pushed on the Arab countries' fear that Iran will strike them. Why would Trump care about other Arab countries getting struck? I mean, he doesn't even care about Saudi Arabia. They pretend to because there is still a petrodollar deal, kind of, even though Saudi Arabia didn't re-sign it, but that doesn't really matter. Most of oil is still sold and bought in petrodollars. So that causes the U.S. to bend down to Saudi Arabia on just about everything. However, I don't know that Trump actually cares if Iran strikes Arab countries. But Netanyahu went running to Mar-a-Lago. The protests began the 28th of December. Netanyahu ran to Mar-a-Lago on the 29th. And you do have to wonder, why would he need to do that if this was, well coordinated? And I think he probably ran there to try and talk Trump out of bombing Iran at this moment. Netanyahu very much wants to bomb Iran long term, but in the moment, Israel doesn't have a lot of their interceptor missiles left. They know Iran can get through their their tofu dome. And so I think that it's quite possible Israel, yes, they want regime change. They want these protests to be very violent so that they can try and foster this regime change idea. But I don't think they actually want full retaliation from Iran. Anyway, to go back to Joe Lauria, the piece gives no reasons why Netanyahu, normally keen on a U.S. strike, would do this, nor did it back up the subtitle that says Israel fears Iranian retaliation. That would have been a bombshell revelation for the Times to report that Israel is not prepared to withstand Iran's counterattack after the damage it suffered from Iran in the June war. So basically, this article by New York Times did not say that Israel was not ready for retaliation, which actually makes me believe it more. It's like, if the New York Times says it, then it's probably a ruse. If the New York Times avoids saying Israel is not ready for retaliation, that very well might be true. The piece provides no further details and moves on to other subjects without again mentioning Israel's call to halt the attack. It was almost as if the Times was afraid to admit why Israel asked Trump to back off, because in its current state of unpreparedness, it is spooked by Iran. Ynet Global wrote Trump had sought to carry out a powerful strike quickly, preferably a one-off action, and collapse the Iranian regime. However, his advisors and Pentagon generals were unable to guarantee that such a move could be swift. A rapid and forceful operation would require extensive preparations, as was the case, for example, in Venezuela, preparations that had taken weeks, if not months. In any event, the generals and National Security Council officials told Trump that even a strike on Iran would not necessarily bring about the regime's collapse. So basically, I think some of these people were saying you can strike Iran, you might even hit the things you want to hit. It doesn't mean the regime's going to fall. It almost definitely means Iran is going to strike U.S. bases. They're going to strike Israel. So you may very well not get the result you want. Joe Lawyer says that the consortium news says that must have bummed Trump out when he found out the job of overthrowing the Iranian government would not be done in an afternoon. Quote, what was certain was that such a strike would trigger retaliation. American bases through the Middle East would be attacked. Israel would be forced to confront and absorb missile and drone barrages. And the energy industries of other U.S. allies in the Gulf would also be hit. That in turn would drive up global oil prices and the cost of petroleum products, including in the United States, which Trump doesn't want that, right? Because he wants to brag about how look how affordable gasoline is, because Trump's such an awesome president. Times of Israel reinforced that story, saying experts, and we've talked on this live stream how for some reason Israeli media is allowed to cover things that U.S. media refuses to. Israeli media has many times covered the Hannibal Directive, the Israeli efforts to murder their own people on October 7th. Now, that doesn't mean they go as far as I will go to say that, to talk about Israel knowing about it a year in advance and letting it happen at minimum. But anyway, they talked a lot about the Hannibal Directive, and U.S. media, if you ever mention it on a U.S. media channel, then they will act like you just issued a bomb threat to their network, and they'll yank you off the air immediately. The Times of Israel reinforced the story, saying experts have warned that Israel may find itself less equipped to defend itself against Iran's missile threat than it was in the 12-day war in June, when Israel targeted their military leadership, nuclear program, and missile production. Just 5 days into the 12-day war, the Wall Street Journal reported that Israel's stocks of Arrow interceptor missiles were becoming depleted. 5 days in, Israel was running out of interceptor missiles. That's their Iron Dome. It took 5 days. The war ended 7 days later. Had it not ended 7 days later, Israel might have used up its entire stockpile. The U.S. came to Israel's rescue, but had to fire 150 or 25% of the U.S.'s entire store of THAAD interceptors in assisting Israel. It would take more than a year to replenish that amount. Although Israel has its own sophisticated system, multi-layered defense, and was running low on its interceptors and was husbanding resources by the time the conflict ended, had Iran fired a few more large volleys of missiles, Israel could have exhausted its supply of top-tier Arrow 3 munitions. So, and I don't remember hearing, I covered it back when it happened, during the 12-day war, I covered how Iran had actually gotten through the missile defenses on Israel, and it took 4 countries just to give Israel the defense that it had. So I did cover that. I did not know at the time that they were running out of their interceptor missiles. Now, 7 months after the war, Israel is apparently still unable to replenish insufficient stockpiles of interceptors to ward off Iranian ballistic missiles in a more prolonged conflict. And there is little indication when Israel might be ready. During the war, Iran fired those 550 ballistic missiles and more than 1,000 drones at Israel. Tel Aviv claims it intercepted 86% of them. But the thing is, that 12%, even if they're not lying, even if they're telling the truth, 86%, that 12% were the important ones. Despite strenuous efforts by Israeli authorities to suppress the news from bomb sites, including arresting news crews, including one journalist for the Gray Zone was put in prison and they threatened him with a life sentence for covering the stories. The extent of the destruction Israel suffered from those few missiles that got through was sufficient. Of course, 12% of, what's the number? 1,550? I don't, someone else can do the math for me. I don't know what 12% of that is, but it seems like a lot. The Israel Tax Authority has received applications for financial assistance from nearly 33,000 damaged structures. Iran's missiles that got through in a 12-day war damaged 33,000 Israeli structures. Does that sound like an Iron Dome to you? In Tel Aviv, 480 buildings have been damaged, many of them badly at separate sites. At 5 separate sites. In Ramat Gan, it's 237 buildings at 3 sites, 10 badly damaged. In another Tel Aviv suburb, 78 buildings were damaged. 22 will have to be completely torn down. The Iranian attacks killed 29 Israeli civilians, and according to the Haaretz map, 96 buildings were severely damaged. So Haaretz, again, an Israeli newspaper, but they did cover this back after the 12-day war. Chilling maps show Iran's missiles obliterated Israeli neighborhoods. Well, boy, sure does sound like Iran didn't get through the Iron Dome, huh? If you watched the U.S. media during that time, you honestly would believe that Iran didn't get any missiles through, or like got one through or something. Iran also hit a number of Israeli military bases, as well as the Bazan oil refinery in Haifa, causing significant damage. The Weizmann Institute of Science destroying 2 buildings. When the U.S. and Israel committed an act of, and I remember reading about the Weizmann Institute of Science. I think the reason they struck there is because it was attached to or had something to do with a like missile site or a military site. I don't think they were just aiming for institutes of science in Israel. When the U.S. and Israel committed an act of aggression against Iran last June, both countries feigned that an attack was not imminent. So this at the end of this article, Joe Lauria basically says, however, this could be a trick. It's possible that Israel and the U.S. are working to convince people that Israel's not ready in order to catch Iran off guard, like Iran might believe Israel's not ready. However, and so Joe Lauria concludes by saying, last time around, before the 12-day war, the U.S. and Israel pretended that they were not going to attack. Trump said he gives Iran 2 weeks to make a deal, but then the U.S. bombed before the 2 weeks was up. So, yes, they did try and trick Iran back before the 12-day war. However, I'd say the difference here is a few things. One is the fact that Trump is not bombed yet shows that something's stopping him. Number 2 is we saw Lindsey Graham come out of that meeting the other day. I don't know if you caught this, but Lindsey Graham walks out of that meeting on Iran and looks like his dog has just been put down. Lindsey Graham wants to bomb anything and everything. I mean, that poor guy he's just such a miserable human being. Clearly, daddy never loved him. Maybe his dad might have loved him less than Trump's dad loved him. And anyway, he just wants to bomb everything, and he really wants to bomb Iran. He always wanted to obliterate Ukraine, so he's got that, he's checking that off his wish list. But really wants to bomb Iran, and he came out of that meeting looking like his dog had just died. Basically, he was being told in a closed-door meeting that we were not bombing Iran right now. So the question is, what would stop that? Well, one of the things that would stop Trump from bombing Iran is if Israel thought there would be extreme damage done to Israel and done to U.S. bases in the region if Iran were bombed. So that is why I do not, even though Joe Lauria, he concludes with a couple of paragraphs about how this could be a trick, I actually don't think it's a trick. The other thing that makes me believe it's not a trick is that the New York Times, covering basically this topic, refused to say within their reporting that Israel wasn't ready, that Israel's unprepared for this. So thank you, Soon Heaven, for supporting the show. Really appreciate it. All right, so staying on the topic of Israel, but now shifting over to their horror show against Palestinians and their genocide. There's a good article in Drop Site about the unbreakable Nile Barghouti, who is the longest serving Palestinian prisoner ever. Israel had him locked up for 43 years. I forget, but we'll read it in a second. He says, I never, and the reason I want to read this article, so he's been freed. He was freed a year ago, and they just did an interview with him. I highly recommend you go read it at Drop Site. But I wanted to read a little bit of it because we need to remember, as we fight these fights, as we fight against imperialism, as we fight against fascism, as we fight against genocide, as we fight for a better world and a world of cooperation and love and peace, we need to remember that there are people that should have been far more beaten down than us, those of us fighting for this. There are people who have seen far more misery, hardship, torture, prison, just their lives have been 1,000 times harder than anything you or I are dealing with. And yet, I mean, I don't want to speak for you. Maybe you've had a really awful life. So I won't say you, but anything I've ever dealt with. And I think it helps to see these people of amazingly strong will and what they believe and why they're still out there fighting for this better world, fighting for a peaceful world. Anyway, he starts off, Barghouti starts off by saying, I never lost hope and I never will. A 68-year-old Palestinian from occupied West Bank who spent more than 4 decades in Israeli captivity. It has been a year since Barghouti won his freedom in a prisoner exchange deal with Israel. As a condition of his release, he was sent into exile to Egypt after being released. He said, I have been optimistic from the very first day I began my struggle. And by the way, he was, of course, tortured. Now, prison and solitary confinement are torture in and of themselves. So you don't have to, have some kind of, have your bones broken to have it be torture. But he was tortured beyond solitary confinement. He was tortured in the traditional ways you envision torture. He says, I've been optimistic from the very first day I began my struggle. In prison, I was optimistic that I would be free one day. He was given a life sentence, by the way. And even if I were to die in prison, I would remain content because those who follow after me will continue the path because they are convinced that we are right. There are approximately 9,300 Palestinians currently in Israeli captivity. I often mention that. Most people do not mention that every time you hear, the hostages, even now they continue to talk about the hostage bodies and things. Israel has close to 10,000 hostages, minimum. That may be an undercount, but Israel right now is holding close to 10,000 hostages. So anyone who wants to talk about hostages, let's just start with that fact, and then you can keep talking. Nearly half of that 9,300 number have not been charged or brought to trial. Additionally, there are an unknown number of Palestinians held in military camps run by the Israeli army. So 9,300 is not the actual number. It's a lot more than that. Barghouti reflected on his time in captivity, the torture he endured alongside other Palestinian prisoners, and why he believes the Palestinian cause will ultimately triumph. He says, we are not seekers of blood or wars, but we will accept nothing other than defending ourselves and our rights. Why is it forbidden for Palestinians to live like any other people, to leave when they wish, return when they wish, go to the sea when they wish? Personally, I have seen the ocean, only once, in a prison transport vehicle, and then when I was released. The sea is 30 30 kilometers, 18 miles from my village. So why had I never been allowed to see it? Why are olive trees hundreds of years old being uprooted? Why do settlers go to villages to uproot trees, attack people, and kill their animals? Why does the occupation prevent the families of released prisoners from leaving to meet them? And I'll probably do more coverage on it, but for those of you who don't understand what's going on in the West Bank, I mean, Israel wants to steal all of that land as well. And so it doesn't get as much news coverage as the genocide in Gaza, but they send quote unquote settlers in to basically make life miserable however they can. They kill the farmers' animals. They uproot the olive trees. They just drive in front of the house at all hours in order to create havoc, because every time because these Palestinians have dogs in order to alert them. So if the Israelis can cause the dogs to all start barking at 3 a.m., well, guess what? Everyone wakes up. They all get ready for some sort of attack or someone to break a window with a stone or something. It's designed to make life miserable. Even when they're not shooting at them or anything, they're just trying to make life miserable so that these Palestinians will leave, so they can steal the land. And this goes on day and fucking night, every day. Lots of times they'll send what they call settler youth. They'll send teenagers in to do this kind of harassment, because if there were to ever be any charges brought, there almost never are. But if there were, well, it's a teen. How much time are you going to give a teen if you arrest him? But the truth is, who are you going to call to, I know that sounds like Ghostbusters, but I'm not going there. I'm not fucking going there. But who are you going to call if settlers are, throwing rocks through your window in the West Bank or in, some area of, these farmlands and such? Well, you can't, there is no, like, if a Palestinian police were to come, then the IDF would probably shoot them. So there's no one really to call. You can call the Israeli police or the IDF. How do you think they're going to, whose side do you think they're going to believe? Do you think they're going to believe you, or do you think they're going to believe the settler, quote unquote, who said, you attacked him and you punched him in the face? Like, there is no one to call to try and stop these people. It really is, I don't know, awful in just so many ways. Another prisoner told Dropsite, I believe there is hardly a Palestinian household that does not have a Palestinian prisoner. He means one of the family is in an Israeli prison, obviously. In some families, the father, mother, and children are sometimes all inside prison at the same time. We are talking about a long experience since the Arab-Israeli War of 1967. We are talking about a period of almost 60 years. We define ourselves as fighters for freedom, certainly not terrorists, as the occupation describes us. This week, Trump, for those of you wondering how the Gaza plan is going, this week, Trump pushed ahead with his Gaza plan and announced the first round of appointments to his so-called Board of Peace. They include his son-in-law, Jared Kushner, venture capitalist, ex-prime minister of the UK, Tony Blair, and war criminal. Half these people are war criminals. An assortment of non-Palestinian heads of state and political leaders, as well as business figures, some with close ties to Israel. So no Palestinians on the Board of Peace that will run Gaza. The resistance will continue until the Palestinian people return to their, this is again a quote from Barghouti. The resistance will continue until the Palestinian people return to their lands and until American politicians regain their reason. Oh, I can't wait for that to happen. Along with everyone who supports this entity, Barghouti said. He added, anyone who truly wants America to remain a state that upholds justice in the world must stand with the Palestinian people, not submit to the influence of a Zionist lobby. And remember, Zionist does not mean Jew, all right? Because I'm Jewish and I'm anti-Zionist, and there's millions of us, all right? So learn your words. Words, folks. Learn your words. Zionist lobby that is damaging America more than it is damaging the rest of the world. Barghouti was the longest-serving Palestinian prisoner, and I didn't know that the Guinness Book gave out these type of awards. In 2009, the Guinness Book of World Records certified him the longest-serving political prisoner ever. The previous record was also held by a Palestinian, Saeed al-Taba, who served more than 31 years before being released in 2008. Guinness Book of World Records. So that was from Dropsite News. Great. There's a lot more information over there if you want to read that interview about that political prisoner that has now been free for a year and continues to have hope and continues to fight. So every time I start to feel burnt out, every time I'm like, dude, I cover this awful shit around the world every day and it just gets worse every day and woe is me. Maybe I should think about him and how he has optimism, how he is not burned out, how he continues to fight for peace. Maybe think about that. Here is, just to let you know where Israel stands on all this. Here's the Israeli finance minister, Bezalel Smotrich. I'm sure you've heard me quote it from him before. He's more right-wing than Netanyahu. I don't know how it exists, but he says, here are some quotes from him. Erdogan is like Sinwar and Qatar is like Hamas. There is no difference. He also said it is time to dismantle the U.S. headquarters and expel Egypt from it, as it is hostile. He also said, we must explain to Trump that his plan for Gaza is bad for Israel and cancel it. And the reason he wanted to cancel Trump's plan was because he wanted to just keep bombing. There's nothing left to bomb, but he wanted to bomb till everyone was dead. So he considers this now slower motion genocide that's happening in Gaza to be not enough death and destruction. He said, we must open. So this is the most important quote, I think, of the bunch. He said, we must open the Rafah crossing with Egypt's consent or against its will and displace Gaza's population. So there he is admitting that this is straight on ethnic cleansing. To say we're purging a population, we're moving a population, we're expelling a population, all that's ethnic cleansing. It's all illegal under international law. Of course, all that's thrown out the window. But I've been saying that this is their long-term plan for Gaza. 42% of Gaza remains that is not in control of Israel and has any Gazans surviving in it. 42%. Israel has stolen 58% of Gaza. They now all of what is left of Gaza with actual surviving Gazans in it is surrounded by Israel. So there's no longer a border that attaches to Egypt. However, Israel, of course, could transfer people from the remainder of Gaza into Egypt. Egypt has kept saying they will not allow that because they don't want to facilitate ethnic cleansing. And also they probably don't want to help. But Israel's basically saying, we just do it. We just force everyone into Egypt. I also covered the other day that I think their plan, because the Egypt plan doesn't seem to be working, their plan, they just became the first country on earth to acknowledge Somaliland as a country. And I think that is because they want to relocate the surviving Gazans there and then take over all of Gaza and be done with the ethnic cleansing. Complete the ethnic cleansing. Okay. Let's keep moving here. I'll have to save some of this for another day, but let me just cover this story real quick about China. Oh, before I do that, please do join up over at leecamp.substack.com. If you feel like you get one beer a month from me, like one beer worth, not that I give you a beer. I haven't sent anyone a beer, but if you feel like you get one beer's worth, the cost of one beer per month out of all my content, I put out 12 hours, really 12 and a half or more hours of free live streams every month. I put out like 8 to 10 columns, free columns, articles for you guys every month. I put out 4 Unredacted Tonights free for you guys every month. If you think all of that is worth the cost of a beer, literally the cost of a beer, $8 a month, then please go to reallycamp.substack.com, join up. And when you join up, throw in the join up at $8 a month. You also get some cool shit when you sign up for free. When you sign up at $8 a month, I'll email you my ebook, Dangerous Ideas. I'll also email you, either I'll email you or you'll have access to, at minimum, my half-hour stand-up that I just put out, half-hour stand-up comedy. I don't know if I'd call it a special. That seems exaggerated, but half-hour stand-up comedy, my first film comedy in like 5 years. That's for members only if you join up. And that's reallycamp.substack.com. You can also join up for free. So if you can't do the $8, if your bank account says -10 instead of $8, then please do join up for free as well. You can also do that at leecamp.net, my locals page, or patreon.com/leecamp. Hope you will do that and support this show for the whopping cost of a beer a month. It really does make a difference. I have like no corporate backers or anything like that. So, all right, we'll get to the truth about the assassination of Martin Luther King in just a second. But I wanted to bring you guys this. China's AI is lapping the American versions. You know, there's a few American AIs. There's, what's it called? Well, there's ChatGPT, and then there's like Perplexity or whatever. They're not even in the same realm as China's open source. They're allowing anyone to see the code. Open source AI. Alibaba's Qwen, Qwen, Alibaba's Qwen family hits 700 million downloads to lead global open source AI adoption. Alibaba Cloud's flagship Qwen family of artificial intelligence models surpassed 700 million downloads as of January on the developer platform Hugging Face. I love the name Hugging Face. That sounds either that sounds either like a professional wrestling move. Oh, he's giving him the Hugging Face, or it sounds like a dirty sexual move that like only the teens know about. Let's hope it's later teens, okay? Let's, only the 19-year, only the college kids are doing. Did you do Hugging Face with him? Anyway, which made it the world's most widely used open source AI system. Qwen downloads as of December alone exceeded the combined total of the next 8 most popular models on the platform globally, including those from Meta, OpenAI, and the Chinese firms Zippo and Moonshot and Minimax. Qwen exceeded that, all of them combined. Tens of thousands of real-world applications around the globe have been built based on Qwen, marking a historic peak for Chinese open source large models within the international developer community. The success of Qwen was attributed to Alibaba's cloud strategy to open source a wide range of models at various sizes with different parameters, from 600 million parameters to tens of billions. Parameters are the variables that encode on AI system intelligence, with a larger number typically indicating stronger performance. Offering a suite of AI models tailored to different requirements has enabled developers to choose model sizes that suit their projects. But I bring this to you just to show that China is lapping the U.S. in most technology. There's a large-scale study by a U.S. favoring think tank, a think tank that's funded by Australia and U.S., and it looks at like 70 some different technological areas. So like AI would be one of them. Missile guidance might be another one. Whatever, various technological areas. And it found that China leads the world in, I think, 63 or 60 some of the categories out of 74. So basically, nearly all of technological categories, China is leading the world. And the U.S. is showing no sign of catching up, because the U.S. is all about, we're not actually about innovation. We're about trying to crush other countries so that they can't innovate faster than us. Like, that seems to be our game plan, is can we just crush them or cut them off rather than innovate better than them. And in fact, there's a brain drain in the United States for multiple reasons. I'll give you the two biggest ones. One reason there's a brain drain in the United States is because we are defunding all of our schools or turning our schools into garbage. So our children are not actually getting smarter. And the way most of our schools work, and this has gone on for a while, is they quickly decide which students matter, and it's about 5% of them, and which ones are just supposed to be the managerial and below class. So you're put in the other normie group, and they think the normie group are kind of like garbage, and they're the ones that are just going to tinker in the factories. Now, the truth is, if you treated every student equally and tried to get them all a lot smarter, well, you'd end up with a lot more smart people. Instead, the U.S. ruling elite are just gutting education in a million ways. But then the other reason there's a brain drain in the United States is because a lot of the smartest people in the world, I know this is shocking, are not in the United States. Even if it were just percentages, right? Even if out of 1 million people, you're going to get this many really smart ones, well, what percentage of the world population does the U.S. have? 4 to 5%, like 4%. So even if things were even if all education were even, that means we'd have 4% of the smartest people in the world. But instead of having all those smart people from other countries coming to the United States, most of them are fleeing because it's scary to be an immigrant in the United States right now. It's scary to be not white in the United States right now. It's not like there is no Indian scientist who's like, yeah, I'm going to immigrate to the United States right now to do science there or to work on technology there, the computer engineers. They're like, fucking no, and have my family black bagged at 7-Eleven because they gave a guy a sideways glance and he called ICE. Why the fuck would you put yourself to that? So, no. Anyway, so there's a crazy brain drain in the United States. Then, of course, there's the fact that because we are just complete and utter unfettered capitalism, our capitalism does not plan for the future. It's merely who can get the most money, 6 months from now. That is the entirety of the thinking process. Whereas China has 5-year plans, 10-year plans, and it seems to be working, doesn't it? All right. I'm running out of time, so let's get to today. For those of you in other countries, I will explain. Today is Martin Luther King Jr. Day in the United States. This is a holiday in the United States celebrating the amazing work of one of our greatest leaders, Martin Luther King Jr. Now, it's also kind of funny, in this darkly funny, in that even ignoring his death, just look at his life. During his life, the U.S. government did everything they could to shut him down. They locked him up in prison at some times. He was criticized, spit on. Even at the time of his death, he was not liked by most Americans. I don't know what the actual percentages were, but polls showed that maybe it was 30% of Americans had a positive view of Martin Luther King Jr. And that was not because of what he was saying, more so is because of propaganda against him. Just crazy anti-black people, anti-poor people, who he was also standing up for. And anyway, so the U.S. government does everything they can to shut down Martin Luther King Jr. Then he dies. And then ultimately, not only do we give him a holiday, and he's probably the second most number or third. I bet you it's third most streets in America, streets or schools or whatever institutions are named after MLK. Probably third to Columbus and JFK, if I had to guess. But another person that the U.S. killed. So here's what we do in the U.S. If you want to understand the U.S., we ignoring the genocider Christopher Columbus. I'm not talking about him, but we murder the people, the leaders that are trying to create some equality, trying to create some world peace, trying to create justice. We murder them. The U.S. government murders them, and then they name all the streets after them. So that's what we have going on. most people now there's like endless discussion over who killed JFK. I've talked about it a lot. I mean, it was the CIA working with other entities, but there's surprisingly a lot less coverage or discussion about the assassination of Martin Luther King Jr. Now, I have covered a lot over my history on various shows, on Unredacted Tonight, on this show. And so I'm not going to go through all of it, but I am going to go through a little bit from this recent article from Sheer Post. I also have published a bunch of Sheer Posts. They're great if you're looking for more outlets. By the way, if you're just looking for which outlets to follow, radindiemedia.com. One place, radindiemedia.com. It is just a steady flow of all the best outlets. And Eleanor Goldfield and I created it, and it is free to use. It doesn't even have ads. So you literally just go there and see all the best stuff. radindiemedia.com. So if you're looking for one source to like check out once a day, radindiemedia.com. INDIE, by the way. Anyway, here's over at Sheer Post. 58 years later, the truth about MLK's murder still terrifies America. And I'm going to skip down to where he starts to talk about some of the evidence. We're not going to have time for all of it. Like I said, I've done plenty of coverage on it. Maybe I'll write another maybe I'll do a segment of more Unredacted Tonight this week on it, or next week on it. I don't know. But I did interview probably the guy who investigated MLK Jr.'s death more than anyone, William Pepper. And William Pepper wrote multiple books on it. You should, if you're interested in this at all, you should definitely read The Plot to Kill King. And anyway, Pepper will be mentioned as we go through. Unfortunately, he died a couple of years ago or a year ago or something. But I did get to interview him a few times on Redacted Tonight. The United States case against James Earl Ray, for those of you who are like 20 years old or kind of have no idea, James Earl Ray was the one who everyone said killed Martin Luther King Jr. He shot him from across the parking lot there. A good old boy with a gun, and he just felt like shooting MLK in the face. The United States government case against James Earl Ray was extremely weak from the start, and in the intervening years has grown so weak that it's no longer believable. A vast body of evidence has accumulated that renders it patently false. The corporate mass media, and I'll go ahead and give away rather than burying the lead. I'll give away the lead. No one in the King family, including Coretta Scott King, ultimately believed James Earl Ray killed MLK. They all said James Earl Ray was innocent. He ultimately died in prison in, I think, the 90s. So none of the King family believes he murdered MLK. But then on top of that, I think the biggest thing is that in the only trial ever held over the death of Martin Luther King Jr., which was a civil trial in, I believe, 1999, after hearing from 70 witnesses, and it went on for days, the jury found that James Earl Ray had not killed Martin Luther King Jr. And that who had killed Martin Luther King Jr.? Well, it was a combination of this bar owner named Lloyd Jowers, who facilitated it, with other conspiring forces. Now, the other conspiring forces, if you read William Pepper's book, the gunman was almost definitely Memphis police, but it was also done in coordination or with a parallel force of FBI at minimum and maybe CIA as well. But it seems like the person who actually made the call to take out MLK was likely J. Edgar Hoover, FBI. The corporate mass media has, for nearly 60 years, echoed the government's version of the King assassination. Here and there, however, mainly through the alternative media and also through the monumental work and persistence of the King family lawyer, William Pepper, the truth about the assassination has surfaced. Through decades of research, a TV trial, a jury trial, and 3 books, Pepper documented the parts played in the assassination by Director J. Edgar Hoover, FBI director, Army Intelligence, oh, I forgot to list that one, Memphis Police, and Southern Mafia figures. In his last two books, An Act of State and The Plot to Kill King, Pepper presented his comprehensive case. And the updated version of The Plot to Kill King is the one where he finally gives a name to the actual shooter. He knew prior to that, he knew it was Memphis PD, but I think he couldn't nail down which person had pulled the trigger. But ultimately he does. I don't actually remember the guy's name. Maybe it says it here, but I don't actually remember his name. But he ultimately does nail down who it is. The guy, long retired from Memphis PD, this is bad. He might be dead now, but this was back in the early 2000s, was driving cabs in Memphis by that time. And William Pepper, my favorite part, one of my favorite parts of the book is, they have the transcript of the recording in the book. They get into the guy's cab, and one of like Pepper's assistant in the investigation or something is asking him questions and starts basically talking about the assassination of MLK and leading him down his path. And slowly this cab driver starts to realize that these guys are kind of onto him, and they know he's this former Memphis police officer. And they lead him to believe that, I don't know, someone's going to sue him or someone's after him to prosecute him for it or something like that. And his response is, how are they going to come after me for something I did years ago? I mean, something they think I did years ago. There's a bit of a Freudian slip where he's like, for something I did years ago. I mean, something they say I did years ago. Whoops. Anyway, William's William Pepper's decade-long investigation not only refutes the flimsy case against James Earl Ray, but proves that King was killed by a government conspiracy led by Hoover and the FBI. He was right to assert that, quote, we have probably acquired more detailed knowledge about this political assassination than we have ever had about any previous historical event. This makes the silence around this revelation even more shocking. This shock is accentuated when one is reminded or told for the first time that in 1999, a Memphis jury, after a 30-day trial with 70 witnesses, found the U.S. government guilty of killing MLK. Author James W. Douglas, along with Memphis TV reporter Wendell Stacy and trial witness Douglas Valentine, were the only people to attend every day of the trial. So you got three people who were there every day. In his recent book, Martyrs to the Unspeakable, The Assassinations of JFK, Malcolm, Martin, and RFK, Douglas provides a wealth of new details about the assassination of King, which he calls a government execution as well as assassination. In the 1999 Memphis civil trial, that's the one I told you about, brought by the King family, the jury found that King was murdered by a conspiracy that included government agencies. The corporate media, when they reported it all, dismissed the jury's verdict. So you can actually find, and I've looked it up before, the New York Times article, it's scanned online, from 1999, addressing the fact that this civil trial happened and that they found that James Earl Ray did not kill Martin Luther King. However, the New York Times, it's like a one-paragraph coverage of it. The New York Times just goes, but, honestly, if they could have found a way to spell, they would have. Because that's what it was, just that was their response to the fact that 70 witnesses in a 30-day trial found it was not James Earl Ray. Anyway, increasing evidence emerged during the trial that the owner of Jim's Grill, Lloyd Jowers, was deeply involved in the assassination. And in fact, when they did the civil trial, Lloyd Jowers, he was like in his late 90s. He was, on death's door. He had nothing to gain from this. He wasn't getting paid for it. I think he just thought he was going to hell and maybe needed to admit it. But there was no way it's not like he was lobbying for a book deal, How I Killed King or something. He just basically decided at that late age that he was going to reveal the truth after, I'm sure, a lot of pressure. And I don't mean pressure like we're going to kill you or something. I just mean pressure like, come on, tell us what happened that day. Lloyd Jowers appeared on ABC's primetime the end of my sentence was, in the 1999 trial, Lloyd Jowers was a witness for the prosecution, for the group saying that the government had done this. Lloyd Jowers was part of the plot, and he was admitting that he was part of the plot with other government forces. He was just the owner of a grill, but it happened to be a grill that the back door faced straight out across the parking lot at MLK's hotel room. William Pepper writes, Lloyd Jowers cleared James Earl Ray, cleared meaning proved he was innocent, saying that he did not shoot MLK, but that he, Jowers, had hired a shooter after he was approached by Memphis produce man Frank Liberto and paid $100,000, which, if it's $100,000 back then, that's like well over $1 million now. I feel like that's like $5 million. It's possible they mean paid $100,000 in today's money. I don't know. But to facilitate the assassination. He also said that he had been visited by a man named Raul, who delivered a rifle and asked him to hold it until arrangements were finalized. The morning after the primetime live broadcast, there was no coverage of the previous night's program on ABC. It was a confession on primetime television to involvement in one of the most heinous crimes in the history of the public, and virtually no American mass media coverage after the fact. And Raul, if you read Plot to Kill King, there's a lot of discussion and investigation into Raul. Raul was this, basically, James Earl Ray is a former prisoner, convict, and they likely helped him. The FBI and CIA had multiple patsies running around, people they could use, they could move into position, do in various ways. James Earl Ray was one of those. And he had kind of a handler called Raul. Now, if you're a loner who's a criminal and some guy befriends you and pretends to be a fellow loner, but he's always willing to loan you a little money and help you out and give you things, then it's not surprising that James Earl Ray became close with this guy. And this guy was able to kind of move him into position where he wanted to. And so Raul, there's a lot of evidence in the book. I didn't memorize it all, but that Raul was CIA. And he was undercover, pretending to befriend James Earl Ray just to move him into the patsy position. And that's why it would make sense that Raul was also the person to provide the gun to Lloyd Jowers. And then, Memphis PD dude shows up on the day of or morning of, and Lloyd Jowers is standing there with the gun and says, here's the gun. Do what you're doing. Another fun fact, this, you don't see this included a lot, but it's in a couple of the books on this, but I just find it so amazing so there's that famous scene, famous image of MLK getting shot. Let's see, I'll pull it up real quick. So there's this famous image of MLK getting shot. Probably one of the most famous images in the world. And I know many of you are listening to the podcast, but you can probably picture the image in your head. MLK, the image is after he's been shot, obviously. So MLK's down on the ground, and someone, maybe a police officer or something, has asked the guys standing with MLK, which included a bunch of, relatively famous activists at the time, but where the shot came from. And they all point up this hill to where the shot came from. And so they're all pointing at the same time. And they're pointing because there's a big hill, there's a hill and a drop down into the parking lot that's below them. And they're pointing basically straight into this tree line that was, again, behind Lloyd Jowers' grill. So there's a bunch of trees and brush, or they weren't full-size trees. I think they were like bushes or small trees. And the following day, so that's where the gunshot came from. This Memphis PD officer shot from behind those bushes or behind those trees. The following day, the city of Memphis goes in and cuts down all of those bushes and removes all of it. And so within 24 hours, that very covered area where you could take a shot is no longer very covered and is just a clean hill. And I just find that amazing because now, then if someone says, oh, the shot came from that hill, everyone would go, well, why didn't everyone see it? I mean, he's sitting on that hill. It's like, no, there were trees and bushes there. But I also love the idea that the city of Memphis was like, what? Someone really famous was murdered here? We better clean up a little. Let's just tear out all the bushes on this crime scene. I think that's the best move. Just rip up all the bushes, just mow the lawn, throw out any, little pieces of metal you find, like shell casings. Just throw it all out, and definitely put a lot of footprints everywhere you can. Just walk back and forth for a while. It's just such a hilarious way to treat a crime scene, unless you don't really want people to find out what happened. So this is a great article, and it has a lot more information, but I don't really have time to go through it all. Let's see. I wanted to see if I could find the name of. Oh, they have the bushes thing in here. Pepper presents conclusive evidence that the bushes were cut down the morning after the assassination in an attempt to corrupt the crime scene. The order to do so came from, now what do you think? Do you think it came from the municipal government that cleans bushes? The order to do so came from the Memphis Police Department Inspector Sam Evans to Maynard Stiles, a senior administrator of the Public Works. Yeah, interesting that. Let's see. I want to see if they give the name of the. I don't think they give the name of the shooter. No, I don't think they do in this, but I know that in his book, Plot to Kill King, he does give the name. Anyway, so as you celebrate Martin Luther King Day, know that it was the U.S. government, along with other forces, that took out one of our greatest leaders, Martin Luther King Jr. But some other important facts are the point that it became truly important for them to take him out was when he started uniting the black cause with the poor cause. He started, because at first it was about desegregation, etc., civil rights. And then it started to grow into a poor people's campaign, black or white, let's unite, let's change this government. Well, now you're talking real numbers. Now you're not just a tiny, segment of the population. If you get all the poor to join you and everyone who supports the poor in America to join you. Basically, when leaders start to talk about uniting, that's when they seem to fall headfirst into bullets for some odd reason. He also had a few criticisms of capitalism, which I think was not good for his health. But it was also not so long after he finally came out against the Vietnam War. I think at first when the Vietnam War was kind of getting going, he viewed it as not kind of his fight. It was more like, I'm focused on civil rights. But then ultimately he did come out against the Vietnam War in a strong way. And that also seemed to be bad for his health. But anyway, such important facts, and it's amazing that people don't know that. I mean, I think part of my awakening into like the level of lies that we get as American citizens was when I found out about that civil trial in 1999, that the only trial ever held on the death of MLK did not say James Earl Ray was the killer. And I had never heard any of that. I mean, this is it's not pre-internet, but it's before the internet was everywhere. And I was more than the fact that it happened, I was just amazed that there was no discussion of it, no coverage. I'd never seen. I still saw mainstream media talking about James O'Reilly killing MLK, and I was like, but we know that's not true. Like, and if you haven't yet woken up to what our mainstream media is, it's like it's like, whoa, they'll just keep lying about the death of one of the most famous Americans who's ever lived. That's crazy. And they're all doing it. Like, it was quite shocking and made me rethink a lot of things. Okay, also want to tell you, oh yeah, here's a fun extra story to throw in here. For those of you concerned about climate crisis at all, the richest 1% have used their entire year's worth of carbon in around 1 week. Meaning, if you were to take the amount of carbon that we could safely use in a year, and you were to allot that to each, like, per capita, allot it to each, this much to each citizen or each person, the 1% use their entire year's worth in 1 week. Because it's like one private jet is, like 10,000 cars or whatever it is. So it's just hilarious, the amount that the 1% contribute to the absolute destruction of the planet is on a level that's unfathomable for most of us. And then, of course, actually, I'm going to I'll be at the Baltimore premiere of Abby Martin's new movie on the amount that the military is destroying our health and destroying our future planet, the U.S. military. It's called World's Greatest Enemy. She's had screenings in a lot of cities. I was also at the Washington, D.C. premiere. But the Baltimore premiere, if you want to come, is January 29th. I don't have the information in front of me at the moment, but I know it's January 29th. And if you were to Google Baltimore premiere, World's Greatest Enemy, January 29th, I'm sure you'll find it. And maybe on the next live stream, I'll remember to have the flyer up for you. But anyway, it really is just unfathomable, the amount they're destroying the planet that they, of course, live in, but also they have kids too. They seem to not, I mean, they're all sociopaths. Like, you have to be a sociopath to have that much money. And so they seem to not care at all about any kind of future generations or anything. Let's see. Well, the website is did I say World's Greatest Enemy? Man, I'm an asshole. Earth's Greatest Enemy. They're kind of similar, World and Earth. Okay. It's called Earth's Greatest Enemy. It is not available to stream online yet. They're like looking for an online distributor eventually, but if you want to see it, you got to see it live for now. Earth's Greatest Enemy, and the website is earthsgreatestenemy.com. Abby Martin has been working on this for years. So, and I've already seen it once. It's an excellent film, and you should definitely check it out. Okay, but I also wanted to tell you about my latest Substack column. For those of you who already watched Unredacted Tonight, it will sound familiar because it is based on an Unredacted Tonight segment, but you can go read it or share the written version. I know a lot of people like to share the written version more so than videos because people, I don't know, are more likely to read, which would be nice. It'd be nice if Americans were more likely to read. But it's at reallecamp.substack.com, and it is called The Big Secret: U.S. Police Kill 3,000 Americans a Year. Now, if you were to Google how many people did American police kill last year, you will get a number around 1,314. And you will go, Lee Camp is wrong. This says 3,000. I Googled it. I asked ChatGPT, and it said 1,300. So Lee Camp is wrong, and he's lying and fake news. Well, you would be correct if you weren't wrong. The reason I get the number 3,000 or close to 3,000 is because I'm taking into account the large-scale study done by the Lancet Medical Journal, published in the Lancet Medical Journal, showing that 55% of all murders by U.S. police are not written down as murders, which should not be shocking to you. The police, if they kill someone, have the ability to change the story. They have the ability to put in whatever paperwork they want as to how that guy died, unless someone's sitting there filming them. And guess what? Most of the time they murder someone is not sitting there filming them. The vast majority. And if you think about the times where you've seen the police murder someone, like in the case of George Floyd, perhaps the biggest well-known example of watching the police murder someone, what do you think they said was the cause of George Floyd's death? If you actually look back for the first days and maybe weeks after he died, the medical examiner and the police report said that he died from a heart attack due to drugs and, other issues, chronic health issues, or however they phrased it. They did not say fucking douchebag kneeled on his neck for 8 minutes. That was not in the report. But ultimately, because we all saw the video and America was on fire at the time, they changed the report and they said, yes, Chauvin did kill George Floyd. But they tried to get away with saying, no, he happened to be having a heart attack while we were kneeling on his neck. So imagine if that had not been filmed. If that murder of George Floyd had not been filmed, then how would that have been reported in the actual paperwork? It would have said, man dies from cardiac arrest from drug use or whatever, however they would have phrased it. So would that have been written down as a police murder? No, it would not. So when we see that number, 1,314, you should think minimum 3,000. And I give a lot more facts, a lot more information. I also have a few funny lines in there. So if you just want to show up for the funny, that's fine too. A few more funny lines as well in that Substack column. I really hope you'll check it out. Free to read. But I also hope you'll become a paying member for $8 a month and throw me that beer. Look, I need to drink a lot to do this job. So I need each of you to throw me one beer a month so that I can drink enough to maintain this job. Do you understand how it works? It's not like you're just giving me a beer. You're giving me a beer that is fuel to put up with this garbage news. Do you understand? You're actually fueling. In Back to the Future 2, where you see Doc Brown dump a beer into the fuel tank of the DeLorean because he's found out how to make fusion out of organic matter, so he can just dump a beer can in or whatever the fuck, and that fuels it. That's me. I'm the DeLorean. You just have to dump beer in to make it go. So I need each of you to throw in a beer a month. A fucking beer a month. Come on, man. reallycamp.substack.com. But if you want to be an asshole, you can also read it for free. I'm just kidding. I love you all. Okay, I will see you Wednesday. I do these live streams Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. However, Wednesday will be government secrets. So that means we tape that live at 9 a.m., but you can watch it at least for the rest of the day over at my YouTube as well. So that is Monday, Wednesday, Friday, new Unredacted Tonight coming out Thursday. Hope you'll check it all out. Keep fighting, everybody.